She was eating birthday ramen alone in the staff break room of Denver's most expensive hotel, until the billionaire sat down and finished half of it. Before we begin, drop a comment and let us know what city you're watching from, and at the end of the story, rate it from 0 to 10. Enjoy. There are moments in life when everything you've built, every shift worked, every tip counted, every dream deferred, amounts to a plastic fork and a styrofoam cup. For Imogen Park, that moment arrived at 11:43 p.m. on New Year's Eve, in the humming fluorescent quiet of the staff break room on the second floor of the Grand Meridian Hotel in Denver, Colorado. She was 28 years old that night, and the only thing celebrating with her was a cup of spicy chicken ramen that cost $1.75 from the vending machine near the lockers. $1.72. That was her birthday dinner. Upstairs, on the 40th floor, the New Year's Eve gala was still going. 500 people in gowns and tuxedos were drinking champagne that cost more than her monthly electric bill, toasting to a year most of them hadn't even noticed passing. Imogen had spent the last 6 hours carrying trays through that crowd, refilling glasses no one thanked her for, picking up cocktail napkins dropped deliberately at her feet, and being looked through as though she were a pane of glass dressed in a black uniform, as always. She set the styrofoam cup on the break room table like it was something sacred, because tonight it was. The problem was the hot water station was down the hall past the supply closet, and Imogen had to walk all the way there to fill the cup. 40 seconds, she counted. She was back in under a minute, steam curling from the cup in her hands, and stopped dead in the doorway. The ramen was still on the table, but someone had gotten into it already. The lid was peeled back. A white plastic fork, her plastic fork, was sticking straight up from the noodles like a flagpole. And sitting in the chair across from it, still in his tuxedo jacket, was a man she had seen only on the covers of the business magazines fanned out in the hotel lobby. Ronan Steele, founder and CEO of Steele Architecture and Development. 33 years old, worth somewhere north of $1 billion depending on which source you believed. He was eating her ramen. Not tasting it, not sampling it politely, eating it, with the focused efficiency of someone who hadn't eaten all day. Imogen stood in the doorway, hot water carafe still in her hand, and did not move. "Excuse me," she said. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. He didn't look up, just kept eating. "Excuse me," louder this time. Ronan Steele finally raised his eyes. He looked at her the way powerful people look at inconveniences, brief, impersonal, already halfway done with the interaction before it started. "Is there something you need?" Imogen blinked, looked at the ramen, looked at him, looked at the ramen again. "That's mine," she said. A pause. He looked at the cup, he looked at her, back at the cup. This was sitting out. "I walked 10 steps down the hall to get hot water. 10 steps. She held up the carafe as evidence. I was gone for 40 seconds. Ronan set down the fork, very slowly, like a man who had never in his adult life been told he'd done something wrong and was now processing the experience in real time. "I thought it was left over from the event." "Does this look like event food?" Imogen walked in, set the carafe down on the counter harder than she meant to, and pointed at the cup. The styrofoam, the tiny seasoning packet still sitting to the side because she hadn't gotten to it yet. "Does this look like something from a catered New Year's gala?" He glanced at it again, opened his mouth, closed it. "It cost $1.75, Imogen continued, because she had officially lost the ability to stop herself, from the vending machine. "It is literally the cheapest thing in this building, and you just," she gestured at him, at the cup, at the entire absurd situation. "You ate my birthday dinner." The word landed in the room like a stone in still water. Birthday. Ronan's expression changed, not dramatically, not the way people changed in movies. It was subtle, a slight tension in the jaw, something shifting behind the eyes. "It's your birthday," he said. "Yes. Today. And you're eating ramen alone in the staff break room." "I was eating ramen alone in the staff break room," Imogen corrected, "until you got here." He was quiet for a moment. Then, and she would replay this later, in her apartment, staring at the ceiling, he reached across the table, pulled a second plastic fork from the little utensil container and held it out to her. "I'm sorry," he said. "Sit down, we'll split what's left." Imogen looked at the fork. She looked at him. She considered seriously just walking out. She had enough dignity left for that, probably. She sat down and took the fork. She didn't know what to say. Didn't know what you said when you were sitting across from a man whose company had restructured half the skyline of 3 American cities, sharing a styrofoam cup of noodles in a break room that smelled like cleaning leftover lunch. So she said nothing, just pushed the noodles around and tried not to feel how strange this was. "Why are you down here?" he asked. "I work here." "I mean, it's almost midnight. Shouldn't you be at the party?" Imogen looked at her uniform. The black button-down, the service apron, the small ID badge clipped to her breast pocket that read banquet staff in capitals. "I am at the party," she said. "I've been at the party for 6 hours. I just happened to be at the part of the party where we clean up the napkins your guests drop on the floor." He absorbed this. "I didn't eat at the gala," he said after a moment. 4 hours listening to people congratulate themselves, and I couldn't. He stopped, looked at the ramen. "I just needed something real." "So you chose my 75 ramen." The vending machine was right there. You could afford the entire vending machine. Something crossed his face, not quite a smile but adjacent to one, fair. They sat there for a minute, sharing the cup, listening to the distant sound of gala music filtering down through the ceiling. Imogen didn't know why she wasn't kicking him out. She had every right to. This was the staff break room. Technically, he wasn't supposed to be here at all, but something about the whole situation had passed so far into the absurd that outrage had given way to a kind of exhausted curiosity. "How long have you worked here?" he asked. 3 years. She paused. "You're allowed to ask questions now, after the ramen theft?" "I apologized." "You apologized while still eating it. That's a confession, not an apology." He looked at her with the expression of a man who very rarely had his logic challenged and was finding it disconcerting. "You're very direct." "You ate my birthday dinner. I don't have a lot left to lose tonight." Something in his face relaxed, just slightly. "Ronan," he said. No handshake, just offered the name like a concession. "I know who you are." She pushed a noodle to one side. "You renovated the Langford building on 16th. I watched the scaffolding go up from the bus stop across the street every morning for 2 years. He looked surprised by this. Most people don't notice the work, they just notice the finished product. Most people aren't at the bus stop at 6:15 in the morning. She speared a piece of mushroom. "I noticed it went up faster than the Hendrix Tower they did in 2019. Different structural approach." Now he was staring at her. "How do you know about the Hendrix build?" Imogen shrugged. "I read a lot. Long bus commute, no car. Also, I wanted to be an architect once before life had other plans." The silence that followed was different from the one before, heavier. "What happened?" he asked. She should have deflected, should have smiled and said something easy and returned to her professional invisibility. But it was her birthday, and she was so tired of being invisible that the words came out before she could stop them. "My parents died when I was 21. Car accident, 2 weeks after I'd finished my first semester of architecture school. I couldn't afford to go back." She looked at the cup. "So now I'm very good at carrying a tray level and memorizing drink orders. Turns out those skills also exist." Ronan didn't offer empty condolences. Didn't say he was sorry in the reflexive way people said it when they wanted the topic to end. He just stayed quiet for a moment, present. "What would you have built?" he said finally. Nobody had ever asked her that before, not in 7 years. "A flower shop," she said, and then felt immediately stupid. "I know that's not exactly." "Tell me." She looked up. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not pity, not amusement, something more careful than either. "Not a chain," she said. "Not the kind that does 100 identical arrangements and charges $30 for carnations. Something small, where people could actually come in and sit down and put something together themselves, for someone they love. Or just for themselves. A place that didn't feel like a transaction." She stopped. "I have notebooks full of business plans that are never going to happen. Does that count?" "Why won't they happen?" She gave him the look that question deserved. He was a billionaire eating vending machine ramen in a hotel break room, and he was asking her why her flower shop wasn't open yet. "Because flower shops cost money," she said, "and I can barely cover rent on this salary. I have a second job on weekends." He nodded slowly. Didn't try to solve it, didn't offer anything, just let it sit. Imogen found that strangely more bearable than if he had. The clock on the break room wall clicked toward midnight. "Happy birthday," Ronan said quietly. She looked at the last few noodles in the cup, then at the man across from her, the most unreachable person in the entire building, sitting in a folding chair under fluorescent lights, sharing her $1.75 ramen like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Thank you," she said, "even though you stole half of it." "Especially because I stole half of it," he said. "Otherwise you'd still be alone." She didn't have an answer for that. Imogen spent all of January 2nd telling herself it hadn't meant anything. He was bored. She was there. They'd had a strange conversation because strange conversations were what happened at midnight on New Year's Eve in fluorescent-lit break rooms. It didn't mean anything. It was not going to mean anything. Imogen Park did not have billionaires sitting across from her at small tables. That was not how her life worked. She had almost convinced herself of this by the afternoon of January 3rd, when she walked into the 40th floor event space to begin setup for a corporate luncheon, and found him standing by the window, looking out at the city in a gray suit that probably cost more than her rent, looking like someone from the cover of a magazine she would never subscribe to. He turned before she could retreat. "I was hoping I'd see you," he said. Every rational thought she had fled in no particular order. "This is the staff area during setup," she said, which was not what she'd meant to say. "You shouldn't be up here." "I have a meeting on this floor in 40 minutes. I'm early." He crossed toward her with the unhurried confidence of a man who was always exactly where he was supposed to be. "How's the ramen?" "I bought a new cup. Same vending machine. You're not getting any." He laughed, an actual laugh, not a courtesy laugh, startled out of him, brief and real. "I'll stay on my side of the room." She shouldn't have talked to him. She knew she shouldn't have. She set up linen anyway, and they talked for 20 minutes she couldn't really account for afterward. She told him the flower shop was called Imogen's in her notebooks, and he told her that was a terrible business name, which made her throw a folded napkin at him, which he caught without looking, which was somehow more irritating than if he'd missed. Then his phone rang and he became someone else, clipped, efficient, all that looseness gone, and he walked out. That night, her coworker Kelsey appeared at Imogen's elbow while they were breaking down the luncheon. "So," Kelsey said, with the tone of someone sitting on 4 days of information, "that was Ronan Steele. He was early for a meeting. He talked to you for 20 minutes. We've met before, it's nothing." Kelsey's expression said very clearly that she did not believe this, but she would let it go for now, which meant she would bring it up again in approximately 12 hours. He came back on January 7th. Not to the event space. To the second-floor break room at 11:15 at night after Imogen had worked a back-to-back double and had approximately 0 patients left. He knocked on the doorframe. She looked up from the table where she had her shoes off and her feet propped on a chair and half a granola bar in her hand. "You need a bell," she said. "I've been told." He sat down in the same folding chair, set a white paper bag on the table. "I brought ramen." Imogen looked at the bag. "You found a ramen place at 11 at night in Denver." "It's from a restaurant, not the vending machine. I thought that was worth mentioning." He pulled out 2 containers, set them both on the table, pushed one toward her. "Happy belated birthday." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she opened the container, and the smell hit her, rich and warm and completely at odds with the fluorescent break room. And something in her chest did something she didn't have the energy to analyze. "You don't have to keep apologizing," she said. "I know." He opened his own container. "I wanted to come back." She looked up. He wasn't looking at the food. He was looking at her with that expression again, the careful one. The one she hadn't been able to file away and forget like she'd intended. "Why?" she said. "Because I haven't talked to a real person in longer than I'm comfortable admitting." He paused. "And you're the most honest person I've encountered in years." Imogen thought about several responses, settled on, "That's a low bar." "It really is," he agreed, which was not what she expected. They ate. He told her that his company was being pushed toward a merger he didn't want by his business partner, Leonard Farr, who had been quietly accumulating leverage for months and was about to have enough votes on the board to force his hand. He said it matter-of-factly, without self-pity, but she could hear the weight under the words. She told him about her lease renewal and the $400 rent increase, and whether she should give up the second job and move farther from the city. He listened the way people rarely listened, without waiting for his turn to speak. At the end of the night, standing in the hallway outside the break room, he said, "Can I see you again?" Imogen considered the question, considered the entire situation, considered every sensible reason why the answer should be no. "You know people are going to notice," she said. "Let them. Your board is already unstable. This won't help." "I didn't ask about my board." She looked at him for a long moment. Fine, but I'm not having dinner anywhere I can't pronounce the menu. He smiled. I'll take that as a yes. His ex-girlfriend showed up on a Tuesday. Imogen was near the concierge desk waiting on a vendor delivery when she heard the heels. The kind designed to be heard, a precise declarative click on marble that preceded the woman by a full 3 seconds. Her name was Alexis Vane. Imogen had seen her vaguely at the gala, but not up close. Alexis was the human equivalent of a performance. Tailored coat, perfect posture, a smile aimed at Ronan like a weapon dipped in honey. Ronan, she said, I didn't know you were doing meetings here this week. Ronan's shoulders went rigid. He was standing 6 feet from Imogen and she watched the change move through him like a cold front. Alexis, he said flatly, this isn't a good time. Alexis turned, noticed Imogen. Her gaze moved over the uniform, the badge, the practical shoes, and arrived at a conclusion Imogen could read from 10 feet away. The hotel staff? Alexis said to Ronan as if Imogen weren't standing right there. I always admired that about you, very egalitarian. Her name is Imogen, Ronan said, and his voice had dropped into something quiet and final. You can go, Alexis. I just arrived. Alexis turned to Imogen directly. No offense, sweetheart, he does this sometimes. Thinks he's connecting with real people and then gets bored. There was a beat. Imogen could be professional. She could smile neutrally, remove herself, let the adults manage their drama. She took a breath. Slumming it, she repeated, conversationally. That's interesting phrasing. Is that what you call it when someone has an actual conversation instead of a performance? She tilted her head slightly. I've heard about you, actually. You left your umbrella at the gala. Hermes, right? One of the coat check staff kept it in the back for a week and a half before donating it. She paused. The donation went to a women's... Just thought you'd want to know. Alexis stared at her. They were very grateful for it, Imogen added pleasantly. The silence that followed was the kind Imogen was probably going to spend a long time thinking about. Ronan stepped forward. We're done here, Alexis. Alexis left, not gracefully. When she was gone, Ronan turned to look at Imogen with an expression somewhere between stunned and something else entirely. The umbrella story, he said. Was that true? Completely. She straightened her badge. People leave things. Staff notices. He looked at her for a moment. You're extraordinary, he said, and the word was so unguarded that she didn't know what to do with it, so she walked back to her delivery and didn't say anything at all. Leonard Farr made his move on a Thursday. He sent a message through the hotel's HR department requesting that Imogen be reassigned to the graveyard shift in the event storage wing. No explanation. Just the request, leveraged through enough back channels that the hotel's general manager was already pale when she called Imogen into her office. Imogen sat in the chair across from her manager, listened to the explanation, and felt something close in around her. The old familiar closing in, the shape of being told she was too much trouble to exist where she was. Kelsey found her afterward in the break room. They're saying you're a distraction, Kelsey said, sitting beside her. Affecting business decisions. I'm carrying trays. I've been carrying trays. I know. I'm not doing anything. I know. Kelsey was quiet for a moment. What are you going to do? Imogen looked at the table, at the chair across from her, which was just a chair now, just a folding chair under fluorescent lights. I'm going to leave before they push me out, she said quietly. It's better this way, for him. Kelsey looked at her steadily. Does he get a vote? He'd say yes, Imogen said. That's why I can't ask him. She wrote the note that night. Not on paper, she didn't have the right paper for it. On a brown paper napkin with a pen borrowed from the concierge desk, she left it on the break room table where it had all started. I think it's better this way. Some people aren't meant to be found. Good luck with the merger. She returned her badge, collected her last check, and walked out of the Grand Meridian at 6:15 in the morning into a January Denver that was gray and cold and indifferent to the whole situation. She had a bus to catch. Ronan found the note at 7. He stood in the break room holding a brown paper napkin and read it twice. Then he stood there for another 10 seconds doing nothing, which was very unlike him. He called her phone. Voicemail. Called again. Voicemail. He walked out with the napkin still in his hand, went back to the lobby and asked the concierge, who looked genuinely alarmed by his expression, when Imogen had left. About 40 minutes ago, the concierge said carefully. She walked toward the 16th Street bus stop. Ronan was outside in 30 seconds. He ran. which was, by every objective measure, not a dignified activity for a man in a suit on a January morning. People turned to look. Someone pulled out a phone. He didn't care. He ran 4 blocks through 30-degree air, past the coffee carts and the early commuters, past the scaffolding of a building going up on the corner, and arrived at the 16th Street, stopped red-faced and out of breath. She was there, standing with her coat pulled close, backpack over one shoulder, looking at the bus schedule like she was deciding where to go. She turned when she heard him coming, and her eyes went wide. "What are you? How did you?" "The concierge," she said, still catching his breath. "You left." "I told you, in the note." "On a napkin." "It was what I had." "Imogen." He stepped forward, close enough that she had to look up at him. "You left because of Leonard." She didn't deny it. "I left because I am not going to be the reason your company falls apart. I know how this ends. You have things that matter, people whose jobs depend on you, a board already looking for reasons. I am not going to be a reason." "Leonard is being removed from the board tomorrow morning," Ronan said. She blinked. "What?" "He's been routing acquisition deals through his brother's holding company for 2 years. My legal team found the paper trail on Monday." He exhaled. "I should have told you sooner. I didn't want you staying for the wrong reasons. I wanted you to." He stopped. "Started again. I should have told you." She stared at him. The bus was coming down the block, still a few minutes out. "You ran 4 blocks, she said. "Yes. In January, in that suit." "It's a good suit, it'll survive." She almost smiled, then didn't. "This is still crazy," she said. "All of it." "I know." He reached into his coat pocket and held something out. She looked down. It was a packet of instant ramen, spicy chicken, the same kind from the vending machine. "I know it's not a grand gesture," he said, "but I didn't want to show up empty-handed." He paused. It seemed right given the context. Imogen looked at the packet, at the man holding it, at the fact that he had run 4 blocks through a Denver winter morning to hand her a $1.75 packet of noodles, and she couldn't think of anything more devastatingly sincere than that. "You're completely ridiculous," she said. "Yes. This is not going to be easy." "I know. People are going to say things. They already are. I stopped caring on Tuesday." She looked at the packet for another moment, then she took it, and she let out a breath that had been sitting in her chest for a long time. "Okay," she said. "Okay," he repeated, and the relief in his voice was so real and unguarded that she had to look away for a second. The bus arrived and went without her. 8 months later there was a sign. It went up on a Thursday in the Highlands neighborhood of Denver, in the window of a small corner space that had been a dry cleaner for 20 years. The sign was hand-lettered. Imogen had done it herself the night before, sitting cross-legged on the floor of the empty shop surrounded by paper and paint pens, and "Park and Grow." Below it, in smaller letters, "Flowers for people, by people." Ronan had invested. Officially, as an angel investor, with paperwork and terms and everything reasonable and above board, because they'd had that argument twice and Imogen had won it both times. He'd also spent 3 Saturdays in September knocking down a badly placed partition wall she'd wanted removed, because he was an architect underneath everything, and he could not watch a bad wall exist without wanting to fix it. Opening day was a Friday in early October. Imogen had put out mismatched chairs and small tables near the front so people could sit and put together their own arrangements if they wanted to. There were flowers sourced from a local grower she'd found through 3 months of research. Small handwritten cards at each station explained what each flower meant, in case someone needed the vocabulary for something they couldn't say in words. Kelsey was there. 2 of Imogen's former co-workers from the hotel were there. The dahlia grower was there. Ronan was there, standing near the back, slightly in the way, holding coffee from the bakery next door, watching Imogen in a way she'd stopped being embarrassed by approximately 3 months ago. "You're in the path of foot traffic," she told him, setting a bundle of eucalyptus on the counter. "I've been told I have a gift for that," he said. She threw a stem of lavender at him. He caught it without looking. The bell above the door rang for the first time at exactly 9:15 when a woman came in with her daughter, who couldn't have been older than 6, to pick something out for a teacher. Imogen crouched down to the girl's height and asked her what her teacher's favorite color was. The girl said purple, very seriously. Imogen built the arrangement around a bunch of lavender, while the girl watched with the careful attention of someone witnessing something important. It was a small moment, not dramatic, But Imogen looked up once, across the shop, and Ronan was watching with the expression she recognized now, the one she'd first seen in a break room under fluorescent lights, the one that meant he was actually looking, actually there, actually present in a way he'd spent years forgetting how to be. She went back to the lavender. That night, after the last customer had gone and Kelsey had locked up, Imogen sat on the floor of Park and Grow with 2 cups of tea and the somewhat absurd reality of a day that had actually happened. Ronan sat down across from her, on the floor, naturally, because this was apparently just something they did now, and handed her a small envelope. She opened it. Inside was a brown paper napkin, slightly crumpled. "I think it's better this way. Some people aren't meant to be found," her own handwriting. "You kept this," she said. "I did." "That's a little strange." "I know." He leaned back against the shop counter. "I wanted something to argue with, for when I was sure you were wrong." Imogen looked at the napkin for a long time. Then she folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. "Some people aren't meant to be found," she said quietly. "You were wrong about that," he said. "No drama, no performance, just the fact of it, stated plainly." She looked at him, at the flowers still filling the shop with their quiet smell, at the hand-lettered sign visible backwards through the front glass, at everything that had started improbably with a $1.75 cup of ramen in a break room at the end of one year and the beginning of another. "Yeah," she said, "I was." Outside, Denver went on being Denver, enormous and indifferent and cold. Inside the small flower shop on the corner, 2 people who had each spent a long time being invisible sat on the floor, drank their tea, and let themselves be found, not perfectly, not without cost, but fully and for good. And that was more than either of them had dared to wish for. If this story moved you, or made you smile, or stayed with you a little, we'd love to know. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from and what moment hit you hardest. On a scale of 0 to 10, how would you rate it? We read every one. Subscribe to Tender Love Stories and turn on notifications. There's a new story waiting for you every day. See you next time.